I'm so excited to have you all here and get to know more about Indian Spring School this session. Welcome, Taylor.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
To give a very, very brief introduction, I'll, give it over to you. Mr.
Sure.
Docking is the Director of Enrollment and Management at Indian Spring School. Super briefly, Indian Springs is a boarding and day school for grades 8 to 12. They have a very tight-knit and small community of 325 students on a beautiful 350-acre campus. It's also located in Alabama. So thank you for joining us all the way from Alabama this morning.
Of course. Pleasure to be here. Thank you again. I'm excited to share more about Indian Springs, and I'll go ahead and share my screen here. So let's see here. Okay, perfect. So again, pleasure to be here. Thank you to everyone in attendance. So the first thing I always point out about Indian Springs is that we're a small school with big school resources. So we have 328 students in grades 8 through 12. Of course, having that 8th grade as well makes us fairly unique. So we're a smaller school in terms of our enrollment. We like being a smaller school. We've always been a smaller school. But we have a big 350-acre campus, and there's a lot on our campus. Rare wildlife habitats, a 12-acre lake, wooded hiking trails, a creek, cross-country running trails, organic garden, raised garden, greenhouse, chicken coop, horse barn. And we even have parts of campus where you can dust off fossils, because about 200,000 years ago, Indian Springs was all underwater. It's called Fossil Hill. And certainly there are other boarding schools, in America that may have some of these resources. But one thing that makes us unique is that we are located in the Southeast, where the climate is warm all year round. And so what that means is that it doesn't matter if it's September, December, January, or May. You'll see our environmental science class out using the organic garden. Again, doesn't matter if it's fall, winter, spring. Our freshwater ecology class is out using the lake. In short, throughout the entirety of the 9-month school year, we are weaving these sorts of resources into our lessons in a way that's hands-on and brings these lessons to life. And, we're able to do that in large part because of the climate and where we're located. Another big perk of where we're located is that we share a border with Oak Mountain State Park. So our students can literally walk there. It's a 10,000-acre state park that offers one of the largest varieties of outdoor activities in the entire country. And so, this is nice for all of our students, but it's particularly nice for our boarding students, because what it means is that we can offer kind of all of the typical weekend activities, game nights, movie nights, et cetera. But we can also offer opportunities to go mountain biking, hiking, go fishing, engage in landscape photography, and more. Again, because this 10,000-acre state park is right in our backyard. So we have these really kind of pristine natural resources right on our campus and right off our campus. And sometimes if you have these sorts of pristine natural resources, it's because you're kind of way out in a rural part of the country, but that's not the case. We're 20, 25 minutes from a city with 1 million people, a rapidly growing city in the fastest growing region of the US. And so our students have access to an international airport, civil rights museum, McQueen Science Center, vintage motorsports museum, and more. And so our kids really feel like they get the best of both worlds. Again, rare natural resources right on campus, rare natural resources right off campus, and easy access to a growing urban center. So that's a little bit about our location. If you kind of zoom in on the education that students receive day to day on campus, it's guided by this motto, learning through living. And learning through living is a statement of our belief that students learn more, they're more engaged, and they are happier when they're able to be as active and hands-on with their learning as they possibly can. So if you were to come out to campus and visit and pop into different classes, you would see learning through living play out in a few different ways. You might pop into a class called Contemporary Music Ensemble. In this class, every single section of this class actually forms its own band. And so there's a lead singer, there's a guitarist, there's a drummer, there's a bassist, and they work together throughout the semester to produce 2 songs and then they perform their songs at an all-school concert with the different classes or bands. And so this is a good example of learning through living, because you're not just sitting down, learning how to play the keyboard with a teacher sitting next to you, or guitar. You're learning how to play these things or sing while you produce music, while you prepare for a concert, while you ultimately perform at a concert, kind of like a professional band would. You'll also see learning through living in our humanities courses, where you're more likely to see something like this than you are to see, the teacher at the front of the classroom lecturing. So students are talking, debating, presenting. They're getting off campus into the city to bring humanities and history and the social sciences to life and more. You'll see learning through living in terms of our STEM classes. You'll see learning through living in ways you might expect out of an independent school. So there's lots of lab work, there's robotics club, but you'll also see learning through living, I think, in ways you won't see it at every other school. So we offer students the opportunity to engage in independent studies, which means that as an 11th grader, a student can have a class where it's just them working one-on-one with a teacher, engaging in some sort of research on a topic that they're interested in. And what that means is that when many of our students graduate or are applying to colleges, they've got 2, sometimes 3 or 4 really unique and compelling projects that they've worked on that they're able to mention in their college application. So this student you see in the bottom right-hand corner, he did an independent study with our engineering teacher where he built a device by hand that could measure the Wi-Fi strength around campus. And it came with a GPS tracker. So he was able to measure the Wi-Fi strength and digitize the results, again, with a device that he built by hand. We've also had students do independent studies on how drones can be used to detect and put out forest fires before they spread. We've had students build video games in an independent study using Unreal Engine, which requires coding and C++. And these are just wonderful opportunities for students to explore their passions, gain unique skills, and strengthen applications to college, which matters. You can't talk about learning through living without talking about our choir. We say at Indian Springs that our choir is our football team because we don't have an American football team. And at some schools, the football team is really kind of the bedrock of the culture. And that's just not the bedrock of the culture here at Indian Springs and never has been. We want the intellectualism, the arts, and yes, the musical aspect of the school to kind of form the keystone of the culture here. And anyhow, the choir is a big part of that. We have about 100 students in our choir, and they will travel around the country and around the world to perform for professional audiences. In fact, our chamber choir this year is going to Czech Republic, Austria, and Slovenia to perform for professional audiences. And then you can also see learning through living in our student government. So we run our small school like it's a small town. And every week we have a town hall meeting, just like a small town might. And this town hall meeting is run by a student mayor. So it's not the head of school going up there and running this meeting. It's a student. And anybody can sign up to speak at this town hall meeting. So there's lots of avenues for students to have a voice in the school. And of course, at these town hall meetings, it's a lot of announcements. It's a lot of celebrating student accomplishments. But sometimes a student does stand up and, argue for some sort of or advocate for some sort of change on campus. And we'll have that discussion as a school. So really unique location, unique campus, unique motto that guides the learning. And I think we get very unique results. Over the last 3 years, our average ACT has been a 30. It's about the 97th, 98th percentile. Our average SAT has been a 1400. Again, about the 97th, 98th percentile. And of course, that's average. So half of our students are doing even better than that. And then over each of the last 3 years, we have averaged that 10% or greater of our graduating class has been named to national merit finals. So across the US, only about 1% of seniors are named national merit finals. So we're about 10 times the national average. Our students are going on to top colleges and universities in the country. We've had students go to MIT each of the last few years. Last year, one student. The year before that, two students went to MIT. We had two students who just graduated going to Columbia, and then many of the other top colleges and universities in the country as well. And then finally, we've got a lot of alumni who are going on and shaping the world in really meaningful ways. So John Green he might be our most famous alum. He wrote The Fault in Our Stars and Looking for Alaska, which are now major movies and TV shows. And his books and movies and TV shows are often set at boarding schools. And the boarding school is not called Indian Springs in the books. It's called Culver Creek. But some of the sites that are in the text or in the TV shows are also things that are really here at Indian Springs. So we've had the actors and actresses and directors from these shows out to campus, which has been fun from students. But we have many influential, excuse me. Let me get that real quick. Or I mean, mute that real quick. But we have many other alumni shaping the world in meaningful ways. So Elaine Loria is a congresswoman from Virginia. David O was the lead flight director for the Mars Curiosity rover. So that was kind of a famous mission in the US where we put a rover onto Mars. I want to say it was 2012. And David O led that mission. And he's now leading a hundreds of millions of dollar deep space exploration mission for NASA. And then lots of college professors have graduated from Springs. So Mona Singh is at Princeton. She teaches computer science. Daniel Alarcon is at Columbia. He was recently named a MacArthur Fellow. That's also referred to as the Genius Grant. And so many influential alumni out there. And just to conclude, the one thing I'll say about Indian Springs is that, we're a small school, small classes. Sometimes at a small school, you don't have a lot of teachers because you're a small school, you don't need them. And so you don't have the opportunities to take a lot of unique electives. But that's not the case at Indian Springs. One thing we're really proud of is that we're a small school. There's a lot of personalized attention, but we have an extremely robust catalog of electives for a school our size. Students are not only to do these independent studies that tailor to their interests and passions, but they can take electives such as the ones you see on the screen. Big data, machine learning, artificial intelligence, constitutional law and civil rights is a class that is taught by a former lawyer, where the civil rights movement happened in Birmingham. Business entrepreneurship, where kids actually design a business, craft a business plan, and pitch it almost like in a Shark Tank format. Really advanced mathematics courses, linear algebra, multivariable calculus, DiffyQ, Linux, which is like cybersecurity, freshwater ecology, forensics, which is like crime scene analysis. And this is just a small sampling of our robust elective, that we offer. So I think students get a really well-rounded education and can also go very deep into their passions, which we're quite proud of. So that's a little bit about Indian Springs. I'll now be happy to take any questions that folks may have.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Taylor, for that. It was super comprehensive.
Sure.
I think there are, significant number of questions in the chat, but I think a general, sense of the admissions process that I think a lot of parents would be interested about is I saw that there's a significant number of international students represented at Indian Springs. For the international families and students who are interested in applying this fall or in the next following years, could you possibly walk us through what you're looking for in terms of that process and expectations?
Yeah, so the first thing, we're looking for three things primarily. The first thing is a record of academic success. So, of course, we use transcripts and teacher recs and things of that nature to determine, whether a student will be able to not only handle the rigor of Indian Springs, but, contribute very productively to their classes and get a lot out of it. And they're going to get a lot out of it or more out of it if they're kind of ready to hit the ground running academically. We're looking for students who have, a record of extracurricular involvement. That can be, being involved in 10 different things, or it can also mean being super passionate about one or two things. And again, devoting a lot of time and energy into those one or two activities. Either one Either way, we would just want to see that students are going to get involved outside of the classroom. And then finally, we're looking for students who are a good culture fit for Indian Springs because one of the things that people say when they visit us is that our students seem so happy. And that's something we're really proud of as well. And, at some schools, when you put a lot of high achieving, ambitious students together, you can get a culture that's kind of competitive and cutthroat and isolating. And that's really not the culture here. Our students are high achieving, but they're also quite supportive and kind and friendly and warm. And I think that's why we get this culture or these comments that our students look so happy, because they are. And, we want students who will fit that unique culture.
Excellent. Talking about culture, there are a couple adjectives that are on your website for your core values. Inclusion, infinite respect, innovative thinking, integrity, involvement, intellectual curiosity. Can I ask, being in Alabama and being next to the Civil Rights Museum and being a part of that geographic space, I can totally understand how, inclusion and integrity and involvement are so, embedded into the school's curricula and just the influence of that region. Can you talk more about how you kind of promote these values in the school culture and in the curriculum?
Yeah, for sure. So, we have an EDI office is probably first and foremost. Just this past, it was Tuesday, we had a cultural fair where, different groups of students who identify as, maybe Indian, Brazilian, Korean, African American, et cetera, had an opportunity to share more about their culture with the school. If you look at reviews online, one of the things we're most proud of is students will often say that there's really no cliques here, and that, like a traditional high school, and that students from all sort of walks of life and backgrounds, but also all grades, are really treated equally. And it's not uncommon for someone who's in 8th grade to be greeted, with a hello, or even make friends with seniors on campus. And it's the same with different cultural groups. I think our students are constantly looking to reach out and make sure students feel like they are included and that they belong. It seems like a small thing, but our dining hall works super hard to serve food from, different parts of the world and backgrounds, which again is something you'll often see pointed out in our reviews, which is, just a little way of acknowledging, again, that we recognize that not everybody's going to want traditional American hamburgers and chicken fingers and all that every day of the week. And it's an opportunity for those cultural groups also to kind of share a taste of their background with folks. We're aware that there's kind of an ugly history in Alabama, as there are in many parts of the U.S. But the South is the fastest growing region in the U.S. right now. And I think that's because one of the reasons people did not move south for a long time, that has changed in terms of how welcoming and inclusive the South is. And Birmingham especially is often, we say sort of Birmingham is to Alabama what Austin is to Texas. It's kind of always been the blue dot and the progressive city. And I almost feel like because of where Birmingham is located, the folks in this area go above and beyond to make people feel like, this is an inclusive, safe, diverse area. And the last thing I'll just mention is the University of Alabama, Birmingham is here, and that brings 40,000 people, students, staff, faculty members, et cetera, from across the world as well to Birmingham. And that's the kind of milieu that we're in. So I think Birmingham pleasantly surprises in a variety of ways, but especially in how diverse, inclusive, and warm it is as a city.
Absolutely. I know that a parent had already asked in the chat, how does the school promote diversity and inclusion amongst its students? And I think you kind of touched upon that. I went to college in the South myself, and it was pivotal. It was absolutely essential to understanding, as an international student, what different regions of America is like. And that in itself is education.
Yeah.
And it being a part of different communities and just being in the Southeast climate is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
As you said, surplus agriculture, to be able to go and explore the outdoors like that is another form of education and learning and experience that I think is so pivotal to, having experience international, for international students and domestic students both. Can I ask, from your experience, what does a day in the life look like for a typical student?
Yeah.
Maybe does it differ between eighth graders and, seniors?
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. So school starts at 8 a.m. It goes until 3:20. It's pretty straightforward in the sense that students have 3 classes in the morning, 3 classes in the afternoon. Let's see, lunch is 85 minutes. That's something that's fairly unique about Indian Springs. So it's an hour and 25 minutes. That's because our choir is so important here that we never wanted students to have to choose between the choir and another after school activity. So the choir practices during lunch for 40 minutes, leaving those in choir with 45 minutes to grab lunch. But what that means is that if you're not in choir, you do have an 85-minute lunch. It's a wonderful time to get help from a teacher or to study or to start on your homework, etc. We have a flex period that's in the morning from 9:50 to 10:20, so that's 30 minutes. And I point that out because on Mondays, that's the town hall time that I mentioned. On Thursdays, it's the advisory time. And then on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, that's a free time, once again, for students to use how they see fit. School ends at 3:20. Almost all of our students are engaged in after school activities from about 4 to, let's say 5:30. Dinner is from 5:30 to 7. And then check-in is at 7:15 for boarding students. Study hall is from 7:30 to 9. There's another check-in at 10, and then lights out is either at 10:30 or 11, depending on whether you're an underclassman or upperclassman. That's probably the only way that the 8th grade, 9th grade schedule differs from 10th, 11th, and 12th is that lights out time. Otherwise, it's pretty much equal and equivalent. And then, of course, on the weekends, we've got lots of, different activities that we do with students. 2 weekends ago, the Outdoors Club took many boarding students, to the Chattahoochee River to go whitewater rafting. This past Saturday, they did like a camp out on campus. So there was, bonfires and tents. It sounds a little weird because the students who board obviously have a room on campus, but they could literally stay in tents, and there were campfires and songs and games and things like that, and the lake. So lots of activities on the weekends as well, for students.
Awesome. I can definitely understand that, Indian Springs has a very tight knit and intimate community, and to be able to have, 96% of the students live on campus and to experience not only classes, but, extracurriculars and weekend events and go camping together. That's building lifelong friendships.
For sure. For sure.
There was a question in the chat. Do you need prior experience, or do you need to maybe even, enroll in a summer program to, process an application at Indian Springs? Maybe this kind of a two-parter question. In first, what are the necessary things for an application that parents should, maybe someone just joined us and asked, but what are the necessary aspects of the application process that are critical? And second, do you have summer programs at the school?
Yeah, so the first step is submitting a general application form. And then once you do that, you have access to our application checklist, which will prompt families to submit a parent statement, where parents write about their child, a student statement, students writing about themselves, of course, transcripts, teacher recommendations, an interview. We ask for, an English proficiency test. We are test optional in terms of the SSAT. So families can choose to submit that or not. But that's the bulk of the application right there. There's probably one or two other things I'm forgetting, but then we do offer summer programs. Right now, all of our summer programs are day summer programs, but we are actually in talks about implementing some boarding summer programs. And one of the things we may offer this summer is a 2-week ESL camp for students who want to just, sharpen their English skills a bit before school starts. And so, stay tuned on that. If we do decide to implement that, we've already got some dates in mind, and the registration would be launched in early December. But as of right now, they're all day summer camps.
Nice. That's great information for these families who are interested in getting to have that, American experience even prior to the application process, and seeing if, boarding schools are a good fit for them.
Yeah.
And, for families who are trying to figure out for their children what school is the right fit for them, how would you characterize a typical Indian Spring student in terms of, character, in terms of, what is a character kind of rundown from your perspective and your experience?
Yeah, for sure. A typical Indian Spring student is independent. There's a fair bit of freedom here at Indian Springs. And you can see that in terms of the amount of free time built into the schedule, 30 minutes in the morning, 85 minutes, for lunch. And then there's even from 3:20 to 4 o'clock, teachers are in their classrooms, and that's technically kind of a free period where students can go get help. And we don't have like a traditional learning support center, but there's a lot of support available if students will reach out and ask for it. And so the students who do well here tend to be independent and tend to be willing to take that initiative. We typically say that the typical Indian Spring student is someone who sort of quote unquote geeks out over something. And again, they don't have to love every single subject or consider themselves strong in every single subject, but they usually have to have something that they're really passionate about, whether it's engineering or drones or, music and being in a band and writing music and producing music, or it's Spanish and they love Don Quixote. And, so there's something that really academically gets them fired up and excited. And then I sort of already touched on this, but our kids tend to be just very nice and welcoming and inclusive. I mentioned that there's no traditional cliques. You don't see a lot of like hierarchies in our student body. And I think our students like that about the place and wish to kind of perpetuate that about Springs. And so I guess I would summarize that to say students who are ambitious, but also can root for others as well in their pursuits, tend to be a kid who's a good fit here.
So collaborative, empowering, a good citizen. I mean, it's a moral character kind of, snapshot of what a lot of these schools are looking for. But I think in particular, it sounds like Indian Springs is looking for someone who is not only driven, but also gives back and is collaborative. Yeah. Can I ask, I feel like one of the best ways to get to know a school is to hear personal experiences from faculty themselves and your interactions with the students, or what has been your favorite experience or memorable experience at the school, being a part of the community?
Yeah, honestly, a really memorable experience that I had was actually when I came out and interviewed and was getting toured around campus by a senior from Singapore, who came in 10th grade and transferred from another independent school. And I said, what do you think is unique about Indian Springs? And it was actually a group of students, but she was the one who went first. And she said, Indian Springs is a place where you not only are like safe to make mistakes, but almost in a sense, encouraged to make mistakes, because the students here realize that if you're making mistakes, it usually means that you've stepped out of your comfort zone, or you've tried something new, or you've put forward an answer or a theory or an idea in a group discussion that may not be fully formed, but you're putting it out there because it's what you are thinking in that moment for the group to sort of inspect. And she gave a concrete example of being someone who had never sung before and didn't think of herself as being a good singer, and going out for choir and being very nervous and thinking that she was going to have to kind of lower her voice almost so that others around didn't hear that she wasn't as experienced as them. And kids being like, no, like sing louder. Like, we want to hear it, even if it's not polished. And I think that's just a wonderful setting for kids to grow up in. because how else are you going to learn without, putting yourself out there and making a mistake, seeing what worked and what didn't, tweaking and improving at what didn't. But in some cultures, you can kind of get a snide comment if you make a mistake. You can be put down, even subtly. And that's not only not the case, but again, you're sort of celebrated and applauded for trying. And that stuck with me. And it's something that I've observed here in innumerable ways. So I think that's something that's been kind of a special moment and really repeat moments in my time here.
That's awesome. And, being in an educational setting, I think the biggest thing that parents may be looking for is their child able to, not only pursue and maintain their hobbies and interests and academic passions, but can
Yeah.
they step outside of their comfort zone to further grow, to further push themselves, and
Yeah.
to find something that they've never tried before.
Right.
This is kind of like a perfect segue into a next question, which is, in terms of accessibility, even for the choir, because of how, probably, popular demand there is to be
Yeah.
in a part of the chamber choir, of course, because it's select, and, the general choir for students.
Yeah.
And even outside of the choir, other extracurriculars, what is that process like? Can students who've never had experience prior kind of go through that process and join, or what is it like for a typical student?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's no cuts in any way, shape, or form in our clubs. So any student can join Model UN, can join debate, can join robotics. With our sports teams, again, anybody can join. There are only cuts at the varsity level, but those students can play JV. So you never see a student who tries out for JV and is told, "Sorry, we've got 100 students trying out and 25 spots." And part of that is because we're a small school. So, anybody can join a basketball team, a volleyball team, and so on. Yeah. And then with our other opportunities on campus, like the choir, anybody can join the concert choir, which is the bigger choir. You do try out for the chamber choir. But, that's just like a slightly more, I don't know, rigorous, I guess you could say, group. But for something like contempt class, anybody can sign up for contempt. That was the class I told you about where everyone forms their own band, and you don't have to have played an instrument before to join that class. So if you're just interested in playing guitar or the drums, you can start. Same with an independent study. You don't have to have done rigorous coursework in coding to, apply for an independent study in the STEM space. So in short, we're a small school. We pride ourselves on sort of personalizing the experience here and wanting students to be able to kind of pursue what they're interested in. So I would say in general, the barrier to entry is low.
That's great for a lot of parents to hear, I think, and families to understand. Hey, I want to be a part of this community, and I want to, attend here and, tackle new things and new
Yeah.
hobbies. And it might be a bit daunting to go through that process, not only alone, without your parents,
Yeah.
but to say, if this is something feasible, then I would absolutely love to try. Um, Going through the school kind of website and learning more about Indian Springs, it was super interesting because it seems like, because of the diverse extracurricular offerings that you have, you also have a lot of leadership opportunities for the students. And I'm assuming, there are more leadership opportunities for seniors who are not only taking care of the dorms and being
Yeah.
leaders on campus and initiating kind of that faculty student conversation that is necessary on boarding school campuses. But you also have a constitution, it
Yeah.
seems like. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So it's been written into Indian Springs Constitution that students will be able to, it's called participation in creation. So they will be a part of shaping the school into, guiding it into the future and having a say in what they how they want the school to run and sort of look like. Of course, there are adult barriers around that, but nevertheless, they still have a lot of voice in shaping how the school runs. And I mean, I talked about the town hall, where there's a student mayor who runs the town hall, but then there are these different commissions. And a commission is a group of students and faculty members, and they're led by a student commissioner. So there's a commissioner of boarding, for example. Actually, there are two of them, one from the boys' dorm, one from the girls' dorm. And they meet with boarding students and faculty and staff, and they discuss boarding issues and what they think is going well in the boarding program and what they want to change. There's a commissioner of citizenship. That person runs sort of a big part of student life on campus and runs the student clubs and runs the club expo on campus. There's also a student judiciary, where if a student is consistently, cutting in line at the dining hall, or a group of students are consistently not cleaning up after themselves, or they see bullying, which I use as an example, but is actually quite rare, students can kind of report that anonymously into our judiciary, and a group of students will decide on what they see as a fair, I don't want to call it a punishment, but a fair, next step, let's say, for the student or students. It usually involves a work hour or work hours. So rather than the adults going around and being the ones to say, hey, you get a demerit, that's not good. The students get to kind of be involved in the process of, again, making the community what they want it to be. And that's not the case at every single school. And like I said, there are some guardrails, of course, but within those guardrails, the students have a lot of agency. And that, again, was written directly into the Constitution when we were founded in 1952.
Oh, wow. So it was made when the school was founded.
That's right. That's right. We've had a town hall,
Very cool.
student mayor since the school was founded. Some commissioners have been added here and there, but yeah, it's a part of who we are, again, back to our very founding.
So you also mentioned that the school doesn't have an American football team, but I can see that, the students are part of various other extracurriculars in athletics. They have bowling, they have indoor and outdoor track, you have golf, softball, and the list kind of goes on.
Yeah.
What would you say, what is the student environment like in terms of like athletic participation? Can students join intramural clubs in addition to the league sports?
Yeah. So, athletics are definitely still a big part of campus life. I would say our most popular teams are our soccer teams, boys and girls. Our boys team won the state title 2 years in a row. Our girls team won the state title in 2022. So these are competitive programs. Our volleyball team is also quite competitive and popular. Basketball and baseball will also get some turnout. And we have a commissioners of recreation. So another leadership position. A part of what they do is they try to get students to rally and join or attend sporting events to cheer on our students. So we do have a student section, kind of a traditional student section that folks have probably seen pictures and videos of, usually at football games, but we have a student section like that at our soccer and volleyball games, etc. We do have some, less competitive sports that kind of anybody can join. We have students who do jujitsu and things like that in the area. We have students who do yoga on campus. We have a fishing club. We have students who fence as well. We have students who, we have 6 tennis courts on campus, and we have students who want to play tennis in college, and, students who are new to tennis and just want to start out. And we've got badminton, as well, which is kind of, I guess you consider more of an intramural. But it's, while we don't have an American football team, athletics are still an important part of the culture here, I think.
Awesome. Kind of to wrap it up, I know I've, asked you a lot of questions about the school, to the nitty-gritty details that, are unique and niche about Indian Springs. To kind of finish off though, if you had any advice for families who are interested in sending their child to this beautiful oasis in Alabama, what would you say and advise?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that they should reach out to us about getting connected with as many different members of the Indian Springs community as possible. They can do that obviously by visiting, although I know a flight from, a visit from China can be difficult. We also have a number of virtual events. So we have a virtual open house in January, but we also have a virtual meet our faculty event in November. We have 2 virtual meet the college advisors events. And then we actually have a virtual meet our Chinese young alumni event. So these are students who are from China originally, attended Indian Springs, and are now in college. And the event is in Chinese, and they're going to be discussing, what their experience was like at Indian Springs and what the transition was like to college. So one is at Johns Hopkins, one is at Emory, and one is at Wesleyan. So attend these events because it's one thing to hear from an admission director. It's another thing to hear from students, faculty, teachers, staff. That's when I think you'll really get a taste of how special this place is, because I firmly believe you'll hear very positive things from numerous different constituencies. And then if you ever want to be connected with a current parent or student, we're happy to facilitate that as well. So I guess what I would say is take advantage of all of these opportunities to really get to meet a diverse array of folks in our community.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you heard it from here.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Taylor, for sharing all of your insights and experience and knowledge about the school and the Southeast. It's been a privilege talking to you and having to share your stories with us. We look forward to seeing you at school or on the road.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much for your time and putting this all on. I appreciate the opportunity again to be here.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Have a great day.
Wow.
Thank you all for joining us today for this insightful conversation. We are looking forward to restarting our session in the evening. Please join in the evening session, and we look forward to seeing you then.